Fred Vasseur admitted on the record that Ferrari destroyed their tires and wrecked their strategy in Austria. A brutal confession that makes the team's immediate Silverstone upgrade package feel less like a routine update and more like a desperate survival tactic before Zandvoort. He did not mince words about the Austrian Grand Prix disaster where Charles Leclerc finished 8th and Lewis Hamilton could only manage 5th, explicitly stating that when you do not have the raw pace to fight at the front, you end up destroying your tires and wrecking your strategy just trying to compensate. That is the specific failure mode the doubters seized upon, and it is the exact wound Ferrari tried to stick shut at Silverstone with 3 distinct aerodynamic updates. But here's the tension that keeps everyone watching closely right now. While the paddock buzzes about the new parts, we still do not know if this aggressive fix actually solved the underlying problem or merely masked a deeper flaw that will re-emerge on the high-speed banks of the Dutch circuit. The data from Silverstone has been analyzed, yet the verified performance delta remains completely undisclosed by the factory in Maranello. So what exactly changed between the Red Bull Ring and Silverstone to prompt such a radical response? Ferrari introduced a revised exhaust system, a new low-drag diffuser, and an updated active rear wing officially dubbed the Macarena. This is not just another DRS flap adjustment. The Macarena wing is an active aero component that physically flips upside down when activated on the straights, creating a large structural gap that sheds drag and raises top speed through a mechanism entirely distinct from standard regulation flaps. It is a bold engineering gamble designed specifically for Silverstone's sweeping high-speed layout. The stated aim was never just straight-line speed. Engineers targeted improved chassis balance and more predictable rear tire management across a complete lap, directly attacking the tire degradation failure mode that Vasseur identified as the root cause of their Austrian misery. They knew it, so did everyone else. Nobody said a word. The silence from the garage was deafening as they bolted these new components onto the SF26, hoping the theoretical gains would translate into tangible track performance. But why stop at Silverstone when the championship battle is heating up? When you compare the Austria and Silverstone telemetry directly, the car behaved differently enough to trigger an emergency manufacturing run. Ferrari fast-tracked a brand new floor for the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort after realizing the previous specification was compromised. This floor had not originally been part of the planned development program. It was approved and manufactured in record time before the mandatory summer shutdown, signaling a level of urgency rarely seen in modern F1 logistics. This brings us back to the core question hanging over the team. Did the Silverstone package truly silence the critics, or did it simply buy them enough breathing room to rush through this unapproved Zandvoort floor without panicking? The narrative suggests a triumph, but the missing quantified data leaves a gap that only the next race can fill. We are left analyzing intent rather than confirmed results, waiting to see if the aggressive development pace praised by rivals is actually sustainable, or if it is a sign of a team scrambling to stay relevant against a resurgent McLaren threat that shifted the competitive order in Hungary. The root of this entire development crisis traces back to a specific operational failure during Friday practice at the Red Bull Ring, where Fred Vasseur confirmed the team paid the ultimate price because they failed to execute long data-gathering stints. Without those critical high-fuel runs, engineers were essentially flying blind on tire degradation models when race day arrived. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton were left exposed in dirty air, unable to manage temperatures because the baseline setup was compromised by incomplete preparation. This was not a driver error or a strategic gamble gone wrong. It was a fundamental lack of raw pace forcing compromises that no amount of pit wall cleverness could mitigate. Vasseur's admission strips away any excuse about bad luck or traffic. The car simply did not have the performance window to protect its rubber while running in a pack. That realization is what turned the Silverstone upgrade from a scheduled update into an existential necessity. Pace deficit, tire death, strategy collapse. These 3 elements formed a toxic cycle that the Maranello factory had to break before the season slipped away entirely. Had you ever wondered how quickly a top-tier F1 team can pivot from disaster to redesign? In this case, the turnaround was measured in days, not months. The engineering team took the harsh lessons from Austria and immediately applied them to the Silverstone specification, ensuring the new low-drag diffuser and revised exhaust system worked in harmony to stabilize the rear platform. The goal was to create a car that did not demand impossible trade-offs between qualifying pace and race management. When a chassis lacks inherent downforce efficiency, drivers are forced to overdrive to maintain position, which generates excessive heat and accelerates wear. By targeting chassis balance specifically, Ferrari attempted to give Leclerc and Hamilton a mechanical foundation that would absorb the punishment of turbulent air without surrendering lap time. This distinction matters because it separates the Silverstone aerowork from the separate power unit storyline destined for Monza. One fixes how the car uses its tires, the other addresses how fast it goes in a straight line. Conflating them obscures the precision of Vasseur's recovery plan. So where does that leave our understanding of the Austrian low point? It serves as the definitive baseline against which all subsequent upgrades must be measured. If the Silverstone package cannot demonstrably improve rear tire consistency in similar high-load conditions, then the Zandvoort floor becomes another bandage rather than a cure. The pressure is immense because McLaren's rapid progress at the Hungarian Grand Prix has already shifted the competitive order, making every missed opportunity potentially fatal to Ferrari's Constructors' Championship aspirations. Charles Leclerc warned internally that the team must remain aggressive on in-season development precisely because rivals are not standing still. His warning was directed inward at Ferrari's own strategy, not outward as trash talk. He knows that resting on past glory is a luxury they cannot afford when the margin between second and fourth place is shrinking with every race weekend. The doubters were silenced at Silverstone only temporarily. Keeping them quiet requires proving that the Austrian tire destruction was an anomaly, not a chronic condition of the SF26 platform. Picture this for a second. Imagine trying to redesign the airflow over the entire rear of a Formula One car, not just to make it faster, but to fundamentally change how the tires interact with the asphalt. All while the season is already in full swing and your rivals are gaining ground every weekend. That is the sheer scale of what Ferrari attempted at Silverstone with their three-part aerodynamic package. The headline component was undoubtedly the active Macarena rear wing, a piece of engineering that defies conventional DRS logic by flipping completely upside down on the straights rather than simply adjusting its angle of attack. This rotation creates a massive structural gap that dumps drag and boosts top speed in a way standard flaps simply cannot replicate. But focusing only on that dramatic mechanism misses the broader ecosystem of updates surrounding it. A new low-drag diffuser worked in tandem with a revised exhaust system to reshape the entire rear wake structure. These were not isolated tweaks. They were interconnected solutions aimed directly at the chassis balance issues that had plagued the SF26 since Austria. Wing flips, drag drops, speed rises. The visual spectacle of the Macarena activation drew cameras, but the real story was in the invisible airflow management happening beneath the floor and around the exhaust outlets. Toto Wolff publicly reacted to this relentless development pace, stating on the record that he is a little surprised Ferrari can push updates at that scale so frequently. His comment carries weight precisely because it comes from a rival team principal who understands the manufacturing and logistical constraints of modern F1. Pushing 3 major aero components to a single race weekend requires factory capacity that most teams reserve for next year's car. Ferrari chose to burn that capital now because the alternative was accepting a performance deficit that would compound over the remaining races. The Silverstone package was explicitly framed as an answer to the Austrian collapse, targeting the specific tire management failure mode rather than chasing generic lap time. Engineers understood that without predictable rear stability, no amount of straight-line speed would matter in race trim. The Macarena wing's drag reduction was valuable, but only if the diffuser and exhaust updates could provide the consistent downforce platform needed to keep temperature stable through high-speed corners. This integration is what separates a coherent upgrade campaign from reactive patchwork. So what have we established about Ferrari's technical response so far? We know the intent was surgical, the execution was rapid, and the scope was ambitious enough to draw surprise from competitors. Yet the question of effectiveness remains deliberately open. No source has quantified the exact aerodynamic gain in lap time or downforce units. We are operating in the space between stated aims and verified outcomes. The team targeted improved rear tire management across a complete lap, directly addressing Vasseur's diagnosis of raw pace deficiency forcing destructive compromises. Whether they achieved that target is something only future race data will confirm. What we can say with certainty is that the Silverstone package represented a philosophical shift from incremental evolution to aggressive correction. They stopped trying to optimize a flawed baseline and started rebuilding the foundation itself. This distinction matters enormously when evaluating the upcoming Zandvoort floor, which exists solely because the Silverstone data revealed behavioral differences that demanded further intervention. The doubters may have been temporarily quieted by the visible effort, but silence is not the same as proof. Remember how this all started, with Fred Vasseur's brutal admission that Ferrari destroyed their tires and wrecked their strategy in Austria due to a lack of raw pace. That specific confession is the key to understanding why the team did not simply celebrate the Silverstone updates and move on. Direct comparisons between the Austrian and British Grand Prix data revealed that the SF26 behaved fundamentally differently across the two circuits, exposing a correlation sensitivity that no single upgrade package could fully mask. This discovery triggered an emergency response that bypassed normal development protocols entirely. Engineers realized the existing floor specification was compromised for the unique demands of Zandvoort's high-speed banking, prompting them to fast-track a completely new floor that had never been part of the original planned program. The approval came so quickly that manufacturing was completed before the mandatory summer shutdown, a logistical feat that underscores how seriously the team took the behavioral discrepancies uncovered in the post-Silverstone analysis. Data diverged, floor failed, factory rushed. This was not proactive evolution, but reactive triage driven by the ghost of that Austrian tire destruction haunting every subsequent decision. Here is why this actually matters. If Ferrari had ignored the comparative data and run the old floor at Zandvoort, they risked repeating the exact same degradation cycle that cost them points in Austria. only this time on a track where tire management is even more critical due to the sustained lateral loads through the banked corners. The stakes are no longer just about fixing one that weekend, they are about preventing a systemic pattern from becoming the defining characteristic of the SF 2026 campaign. Charles Leclerc's internal warning about staying aggressive on development takes on new weight when you understand that aggression is being fueled by real-time telemetry showing the car's performance window shifting unpredictably between venues. McLaren's progress in Hungary proves that competitors will exploit any hesitation, making the unplanned Zandvoort floor a necessary gamble to protect Ferrari's Constructors' Championship position. This escalation transforms what might look like routine development into a high-stakes battle for survival against both rival teams and the car's own inherent inconsistencies. So where does this leave the narrative heading into the Dutch Grand Prix? We have established that the Silverstone package was designed to address tire management, that the Macarena wing offered a novel drag reduction mechanism, and that the comparative data forced an accelerated floor redesign. Yet the verified performance delta from Silverstone remains undisclosed, leaving us to evaluate intent rather than confirmed outcome. The Zandvoort floor exists as direct evidence that the Silverstone fix was incomplete, a tangible acknowledgement that solving the Austrian failure mode requires continuous iteration rather than a single silver bullet.